Amp in the time machine, come take a ride through the 1930s with style and stride. Books, films, and fashion, the songs that remain. We regret nothing, the past calls are made.
Welcome back to We Regret Nothing. I'm your host, Sean, and today we're tuning the dial to explore one of the most influential forms of entertainment of the 1930s, the radio. Before television, radio was where families gathered. It delivered news, comedy, drama, music, and escape straight into people's homes. In a decade defined by uncertainty and hardship, radio became a constant companion, shaping culture in real time. In this episode, Michelle, Andrea, and I will introduce the first 10 radio shows from our list of the top 20 programs of the 1930s. These shows created shared national moments, launched genres, and helped define what mass entertainment could be. This is just the beginning. Over the next 2 episodes, we'll debate all 20 shows, narrow the list down to a top 10, and ultimately decide which 5 belong in the space capsule as the best representation of 1930s radio. So, adjust your antenna, gather around the radio, and let's begin with the first 10 radio shows of the 1930s. Welcome, Michelle.
Hello.
Hello, Andrea.
Hello, Sean.
I would just start by saying, in season 1, as a reminder, we talked about the origins of radio, but it was just so early in the life of radio. We covered some of the popular shows, but in my opinion, for radio, the 30s was where radio really hit. So at the start of the 30s, approximately 12 million American households owned a radio. By 1939, that total had exploded to more than 28 million households by the end of the 30s. So as technology improved, radios became smaller, cheaper. They became the central piece of furniture in the average family's living room, with parents and children alike. We'll talk about that with a few of these shows. They would all crowd around the radio to hear the latest installment of their favorite shows. The 30s also marked the advent of the soap opera, this running story that people could continue, just come back to, characters they could sympathize with, fall in love with, and root for. So yeah, that's kind of my take on the 1930s and radio. Anything to add? Okay. So we'll jump into number 1. Number 1 from 1937 is Guiding Light. Guiding Light was a radio series created by Emmons Carlson and Erna Phillips. Scandinavian, I'm willing to bet. And so this was based on Erna Phillips' personal experiences. Start with a bummer. After giving birth to a stillborn baby at age 19, Erna found spiritual comfort listening to sermons by a preacher of a church centered on the brotherhood of man. These sermons formed the nucleus of the creation of the radio show Guiding Light. That is Andrea.
Mm-hmm. I'm first. It's a soap opera. And yeah, I don't really have a lot for this segment.
But you're
So why was it a soap opera, Andrea? Why was
Because
it called that?
They would advertise soap suds.
Soap suds. Just the suds.
Just the suds. Laundry detergent, and yeah. So, which I just always thought was kind of a kick that it like stayed that way for the next almost 100 years. I love that it had the first out of wedlock baby. That never happens. There was a lot. When I was reading through just the subplots. Don't tell me the 30s it was all innocent, and I mean nobody. I know it, but like marrying your foster brother or one chick married your foster brother.
Yes.
And it was just, it was great to find out where Guiding Light came from. That was very cool that it was the light that he would have, the Reverend guy.
The Reverend guy.
Sorry, Reverend John. I didn't learn his name. But yeah, that was my thought.
Okay. Michelle?
My mom was a big soap opera watcher, but she was not a guiding light.
Was she an ABC?
She was an all ABC
General Hospital.
until well, she was Young and the Restless first on CBS,
Mhm.
and then all ABC after that.
Oh.
But one of the things I found really interesting was that Procter and Gamble at one point canceled the show, and then people lost their fucking shit, and they got 75,000 protest letters.
I find
So,
a lot that
To
like they
Sean's
canceled or
point,
got rid
everybody
of
had a
somebody.
fucking radio because this is
Yeah.
1937, so like damn near everybody had a radio, and they were like, "How dare?"
Yes, and
And then-
everybody wrote in. This was like
Yeah.
seriously the power of the pen.
Yeah, for real. And then I also have the Out of Wedlock Baby on radio. And then when this was on is when it was on NBC, and this is when the FCC forced NBC to
Mhm.
split itself into ABC and then CBS as well, and then CBS picked it up, and then that's where it was, I think,
Forever till it got
on
canceled.
CBS radio, and then into the television version for ever. It
Mhm.
was the longest running soap opera in history,
Yes.
and it was 19 of those years on the radio. Which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
bananas.
Yes. Yeah, so a little bit of the backstory though is 1936, Amons has lunch with Erna Phillips, who at that point she was a well-known radio scriptwriter already, and they were discussing ideas for a new radio program. The idea was Carlson's. He had a concept of a Swedish-born pastor, a guiding light, bringing together several families of immigrant parents and thoroughly American children. To Michelle's point, this became the longest-running soap opera of all time. It went till 2009, so it was canceled in 2009. So Carlson wrote the opening scripts as well as the sales promotion, and at first he regarded the whole exercise as just an extracurricular undertaking for gaining additional knowledge that would help him in his work as an advertising exec. Then, to his surprise and delight, NBC accepted the script, and Procter & Gamble agreed to sponsor the program. You two had a look. What was that?
It just seems like just you create this whole thing as research for it.
So let me tell you the second part here, because due to his employment in another department at NBC, Carlson could not take credit for writing the scripts. So he and Phillips had a handshake agreement for joint ownership of the program.
Okay.
When The Guiding Light proved to be a great success, Phillips started to claim full credit. In August of 41, Carlson sues Phillips for her share of the proceeds. After a long court battle, Carlson receives half ownership of the program plus a large financial settlement, which Variety at the time reported was around $250,000.
Jesus.
That was not the end of things,
And F
however.
her.
Erna Phillips.
On
On
some jacked up shit.
on May 27th, 1946,
Pissed too.
show producer Carl Wester filed a claim that he was the sole owner of the program and that he had sold the show to General Mills, that he intended to move production to the West Coast in November. So then Carlson's lawyers get into I have a whole thing that's really interesting, the behind
It's
the
like
scenes.
a
soap opera.
Damn it, that's what I was going to say.
Sorry.
But the Carlson Phillips lawsuit has been called the most voluminous non-murder case in this era in Chicago.
Murder.
Oh,
Thank
no.
you.
Okay, so the show itself, the show's original storyline centers on a preacher named Reverend John Rutledge and all the people of a fictional suburb of Chicago called 5 Points. The townspeople's lives all revolve around the Reverend, and the show's title refers to a lamp in his study that family and residents can see as a sign for them to find help when needed. Early on going...
Reading. What if I have that light on because I'm just reading and you fucking show up?
Yeah.
Work it out.
Early ongoing storylines contrasted Ellis Smith, a nickname Mr. Nobody from Nowhere, with Reverend Rutledge. The former cynicism often acts as a foil to the latter's optimism. Reverend Rutledge's daughter Mary also embarked on a secret romance with her foster brother Ned Holden, as was mentioned. Ned and Mary would eventually wed in a 1941 episode of the soap with Reverend Rutledge's blessing, but not before a series of complications arose. So yeah, there are several storylines, but during the radio years, there were several succeeding preachers who carried on the work of Reverend Rutledge. Thus, they became keepers of the guiding light. The show did move to another fictional suburb of L.A. in 1947, Selby Flats, and then moved to New York, where it stayed until the show was canceled. So, the guiding light. Andrea's spicy, folks, just so you know. You'll figure it out.
What I was working on just a few seconds ago just clicked in my brain of, sorry.
Number 2, The Shadow. The Shadow is a radio drama featuring the mysterious Lamont Cranston, crime fighter with the psychic ability to cloud men's minds and make himself invisible. Known for the iconic catchphrase, "Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows." The show ran from 1937 to 1954. That is Michelle.
I think this one is really interesting because initially the Shadow was just the narrator of the Detective Storyteller Hour, which they created in order to boost the sales of the magazine. So he wasn't a character at all, was just the narrator. And then people started showing up to newsstands asking for, like, where's the Shadow stories? And they were like, they're the fucking what? They don't, that's not a thing. So then, because they were like, oh, we maybe should make that a thing. And then they created the stories, and then the Shadow became the character of the stories. It was really, really interesting.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, smart.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if somebody comes demanding a thing that doesn't exist and you're like, I can make that exist?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Pretty smart.
Okay.
Pretty smart.
There's Lamont.
Andrea?
Why is he a white man named Lamont? That's not a white man's name. That's a cool black man's name. And Alec Baldwin ruined me even trying to do the research for this.
Yeah.
This is the only movie I ever walked out of.
Really?
Mel and I went to see it, and I have a recollection of us getting up and walking out of it.
It was so bad. I didn't finish it. I saw it on VHS.
Bad.
I did not finish it. I know that's not what we're talking about, but what I mean is you get because you kind of grew up like, especially, my parents were silent generation, but they grew up on radio shows. So when there was my mom would say to us, the Shadow knows. Like if we were fucking about and did something and we were like, no, I don't know. And my mom would say, the Shadow knows. And thank God she eventually explained that to me, because as a child, I'm like, there's something in the shadows. I was a high-strung child. But so that's why the film, because I was so excited. Because my parents would talk about radio shows that they remembered and watching, listening to them, everything like that. But I think this is basically what I thought was so cool about it was what Michelle said was, there is no shadow. Oh, wait, hold on. We can get that for you.
Just hang on.
That'll be here next week.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
A young, sexy Orson Welles.
Yeah. Oh, God, that was a good
the voice for a couple of years.
And
a year and a half, something like that.
Orson Welles had a voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, he was.
Oh, and he was smoking hot.
Yeah.
Especially when he was Mr. Oh, God, what's his name? Jane Eyre. Because the only one that could ever really fill his shoes was when Michael Fassbender played him. Ooh. Oh.
I know that's not.
So we're not here for that.
Again, Michelle and Andrea both said most of this stuff. It just in early 1930, Street and Smith hired Dave Chrisman and Bill Sweets to adapt the already popular pulp detective story magazine into radio format. Chrisman and Sweets thought the program should be introduced by a mysterious storyteller. A young scriptwriter, Harry Charlotte, suggested the name The Shadow. Thus, The Shadow premiered on CBS on July 31st, 1930, as the host of the Detective Story Hour, narrating tales of mystery and suspense from the pages of the premier detective fiction magazine. The bulk of the radio show was written primarily by Sidney Swan. The narrator was first voiced by James Locurdo, but became a national sensation when radio veteran Frank Reddick Jr. assumed the role and gave it a hauntingly sibilant quality that thrilled radio listeners. The Shadow debuted on July 31st. I already said that part, sorry. But Michelle already said, but when listeners of the program began asking at newsstands for copies of that Shadow Detective magazine, Street and Smith launched a magazine based on the character, hired Walter Gibson to create a concept to fit the name, and Voice to write a story featuring him. First issue of the pulp series, The Shadow magazine, went on sale April 1st, 1931. And so The Shadow actually went on to narrate several different segments. Not just Detective Story Hour. There was Blue Coal Radio Review. There were several others. But then on September 26th, 1937, the episode The Death House Rescue on the Mutual Broadcasting System began the official radio drama with a 22-year-old Orson Welles starring as Lamont Cranston. Welles, though, a little trivia for you, did not speak the signature line, "Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men," blah, blah, blah. Reddick said that line using a water glass next to his mouth for the echo effect. Yeah. But I will say, this isn't really the trivia part, but he wasn't invisible. Cranston explains he spent years studying in London, Paris, Vienna, Egypt, China, India, learning different fields of science, as well as the old mysteries that modern science had not yet discovered. Natural magic that modern psychology is beginning to understand. He states his hypnotic and seemingly telepathic abilities are not magic, but based on scientific secrets most of the world has forgotten or does not yet understand. Anyway, he can trick people into not being able to see him. He is not invisible. Just want to... last thing I'll tell you, in that same episode, when his companion Margot Lane, who was voiced by Agnes Moorehead, suggested he work openly with the police, he implies the police and general public would not understand or approve of his strange methods and abilities, concluding he is only effective by working outside the law. The Shadow. Shadow knows, Andrea. Knock it off.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, well, you know.
Number 3, the Jack Benny program. This is a radio show that started in late 1934 and used a loose show within a show format wherein the main characters were playing versions of themselves. Show often broke the fourth wall, with the characters interacting with the audience and commenting on the program and its advertisements. In the first years on the radio, Jack Benny followed the format of many other radio comedians, standing at a microphone telling jokes and stories and introducing band members. As the characters and cast became more defined, the show took on a more variety show format, blending sketch comedy and musical interludes. Andrea.
This is my favorite Warner Brothers cartoon ever. And Jack Benny is in it. And remember, he's there with his wife and with Rochester, and it's the Kit Kat Club, and it puts that thing and then goes in with them and their little mice. And then in the end, he's like, "Oh, it's just a dream." And it was pretty fucking awesome. You were there. You were there. I love the concept of this show. I love that Jack Benny is the foil. I love that he is like just a tight-fisted, and that everybody else is kind of like,
They get to make fun of him.
yes,
Yeah.
You know, I really like that. I like that his wife plays his wife. It just seemed like a lot of fun, and I think they did it really well. And now here's it for me. It's kind of the blueprint for a lot of sitcoms.
Oh,
that came
100% it is. For
but-
shit like Friends and...
Mhm.
I'm sorry if you're offended that I think Friends is shit.
but I think it does it better than a lot of, they kind of had it down. Yeah, I thought it was a pretty cool concept, kid.
Okay. Michelle?
I like that that he, again, Jack was the joke. There's a quote that somebody said, like, Jack was the joke. And that he had like kind of a dedicated team of writers, and he almost like without fault gave them the credit for how well the show worked, even though like he was the genius at the head of it. And that he would only like not edit, but he would go through the scripts and just be like, oh, you tweak a little this or tweak a little that. But he was mostly hands off and let them
do what they
were hired to do, what they were good at, and then give them credit for it as well.
Yeah.
Right? Even though it's his name on the show. I love that that Rochester, right, was the first African American to have a recurring role. Eddie Anderson have a recurring role on a show, and that he also got to make fun of Jack, and nobody said shit about that. So and it's got all the earmarks of what you were saying, like running gags and all the the feud that he had with Fred Allen, and then that George Burns was his best friend, which, although I will say this was one that when I researched gave me fits because it went on for so long, and there's so many like iterations of how it started and then what it turned into, and then that. So, but I don't think there's any doubt that it's really,
it's groundbreaking.
Okay. So the format again, the show usually opened with announcer Don Wilson doing a commercial for the sponsor. It changed. It was Jell-O, grape nuts, whatever. But then, accompanied by a musical number from the orchestra, Wilson would then introduce Jack Benny as the master of ceremonies and then would banter with him. Gradually, the rest of the cast members, Mary Livingstone, Phil Harris, Kenny Baker, Dennis Day, would walk on to join the conversation. The banter between Benny and the regulars generally covered the news of the day, Jack's latest exchange in his ongoing feud with Fred Allen, Michelle mentioned that, or one of the running jokes on the program, such as Jack's stinginess, his age, his vanity, Phil's habitual drunkenness, egotism, illiteracy, Don's obesity, Dennis's stupidity, or letters from Mary's mom. As the show progressed, Jack might be interrupted by a phone call from his valet, Rochester, reporting some problem at Jack's home. Problem with his pet polar bear, Carmichael, or with a crazy wartime boarder, Mr. Billingsley. Occasionally, Andy Devine or the Jewish character Schlepperman would make an appearance.
Not as bad as
at some point,
still not great.
Jack would tell the tenor that it was time for their singing number. Don Wilson would insert another commercial for the sponsor, and the band would do a big band number. The second half of the show would be devoted to a comedy sketch. Jack might leave the studio and go home to handle some problem, like getting Carmichael to take his medicine, or there's a mini play, Buck Benny Rides Again, or a satire of a current movie, Snow White and the Seven Gangsters. In some episodes, Jack closed the show with brief instructions to his band leader, and the band would play a final musical number. Don Wilson did a final commercial, and the show would end. That was the format, if anybody cared. I care. No, not you two. I meant anyone, Number 4 is Fibber McGee and Molly. Fibber McGee and Molly was a situation comedy series that aired from 1935 to 1959, created by and starring real-life husband and wife Jim and Marion Jordan. Show followed the daily misadventures of the boastful but bumbling Fibber McGee and his patient, level-headed wife Molly at their home at 79 Wistful Vista. And that is Michelle.
I think that these two owe a lot to Jack. I think a lot of these, you'll kind of see will fall into that kind of, fictional husband wife, or in this case, and in Jack's and Gracie's and George's coming up, that they were real life partners, and that this is like another one of the early situation comedy pioneers, right? Where I do like that they had a writing partner, Donald Quinn, and that they split their earnings with him equally all throughout all of it. When it went, when there were a series of films that came out of this, and that it seems to me that perhaps Marion may have been the most talented of the two, because she voiced so many characters, and she I think maybe just, I don't know, she was maybe just better than he was.
Mm-hmm.
I also like that they had a very, very strict writing and rehearsal schedule, which reminded me a lot of SNL,
Mm-hmm.
right? They had writing, rewrites, rehearsals, and then the show. And they were very that was Jim's format. That's what he wanted. And so that's how they did it. And I mean, obviously it worked because they ran for, also quite some time, because they also went into the 50s with this.
Andrea?
I still call people Fibber McGee. Because I've called
Yeah.
both of you that.
What? How dare.
Yeah, so that's always been in my lexicon. I liked how the article I read said that a lot of people identified with this because it was people climbing out of the Depression, out of the Great Depression, and they won their house in.
Oh yeah.
As people did then, though, too. That's kind of the funny thing, is like people would,
like a raffle.
yes,
right?
yeah, and with they were 13 13 13 was their number that won, but so 131,000. Don't make me do math. I've done math all day.
Nope, not necessary.
But
There'd be no math.
exactly. I too think that Marion was like kind of the drive. Marion took some time off for fatigue.
Is that what the kids are
which
calling
is
it?
what they called it at the time, that she was an alcoholic and they had to dry her out. And I can't help but wonder, because I just associate, just do the Stars Born drama to it, is like, did you drink because you're like, there's so much fucking that I have to do? I don't know. There's nothing. She passed way before he did, which was even but yeah, I see the thing of it. I don't know. There's I'm going to bounce back and forth with these, because there's sometimes where I find the husband and wife thing kind of charming. Other times I find it kind of annoying. Other times like you do with anything. But they have no reason not to. I don't like a feckless husband. That's not my. That's.
But you have. Oh.
I'm glad you said it, because I was thinking it. Yeah, so just real quick, Jim Jordan, Marion Driscoll, both natives of Peoria, Illinois. Jim was the 7th of 8 children born to James Edward Jordan, a farmer, and Mary Jordan, while Driscoll was the 12th of 13 children. So Jim, growing up, Jim wanted to be a singer. Marion wanted to be a music teacher. They both attended the same Catholic church, where they met at choir practice. Marion's parents had attempted to discourage her professional aspirations. When she started dating Jim, the Driscolls were far from approving of him either, or his ideas. So Jim's voice teacher gave him a recommendation for work as a professional in Chicago. He followed it, got steady employment, but soon got tired of life on the road. In less than a year, he came back to Peoria and went to work for the post office. Marion's parents now found him acceptable, and they stopped objecting to the couple's marriage plans. They were married in Peoria, August 31st, 1918. 5 days after the wedding, Jim received his draft notice. He was sent to France and became part of the military touring group, which entertained the armed forces after World War I. When Jim came home from France, or during World War I, I'm sorry. When Jim came home from France, he and Marion decided to try their luck with a vaudeville act. Tricked Marion's parents, it feels like. They had 2 children. Marion did return home for the birth of Catherine, but then left Catherine with Jim's parents and went back on the road with Jim. And then Jim Jr. was born. Marion stayed with the child for a little bit while Jim was solo. Marion and the children then joined him on the road. Couple had to admit defeat when they found themselves in Lincoln, Illinois in 1923 with 2 small children and no money. Couple's parents had to wire them money for their return to Peoria. Jim got a job at a local department store, and wasn't too long, he and Marion went back into vaudeville. While staying with Jim's brother in Chicago in 1924, the whole family was gathered around listening to the radio. Jim said that he and Marion could do better than the musical act that they were currently listening to. Jim's brother bet him $10 there was no way that they could. To win the bet,
1930s.
I know, $10?
1924, $10 is
Come on.
that's but so to win the bet, Jim and Marion went to WIBO, where they were immediately put on the air.
Where you could just go.
At the end of the performance, the station offered the couple a contract for a weekly show, which paid $10 a week. So they start doing that show, and they actually branched out. They were doing several radio shows when they met. Michelle had mentioned Donald Quinn, who was a cartoonist, but happened to be working in radio at the time. I'm not sure Don's story, but Donald Quinn and developed Fibber McGee and Molly with the Jordans. Marion Jordan took a protracted absence from the show from November of 1937 to April of 39 to deal with a lifelong battle with alcoholism. Although to Andrea's point, it was attributed to fatigue in the public. The show was retitled Fibber McGee and Company during that 2-year span, with scripts cleverly working around Molly's absence. Like Fibber was making a speech at a convention or whatever. But I said all of that to get to this part. While his wife was ill, Jim Jordan had closed every radio show by saying, "Good night, Molly." In 1938, early 38, the FCC ordered him to stop the practice, claiming it violated a rule prohibiting the use of public airwaves for personal communications. After a few weeks' deliberation, the FCC found that no actual regulation had been broken because Molly was a fictional character. Jordan then resumed using Goodnight Molly sign-off until her return in 1939.
So you're telling me that the FCC was ran by a motherfucker just like it is now, so shit never changes.
I don't think those are the words that I used, but we'll go with that.
But that is what I got from that story.
Okay. I thought it was a sweet, okay.
That was
number 5.
I thought that was really sweet.
Lux Radio Theater. Lux Radio Theater, a classic radio anthology series, initially adapted Broadway plays during its first 2 seasons, and then it began adapting films. These hour-long radio programs were performed live before studio audiences. The series became the most popular dramatic anthology series on radio, and at its peak, the show reached an estimated 40 million listeners every week. Primary sponsor of the show was Unilever through its Lux soap brand. Andrea.
Baby, I got nothing.
Okay.
I wrote cool concept because I could not find a lot on this. I mean, I saw everybody who was on there, which that just blew me away that everybody who came and performed on there, but I couldn't find anything.
Okay. That's okay. Michelle?
Cool concept indeed, because it was like a really good way for post-depression families to have like a form of live entertainment to hear the movies they couldn't go see, or to hear the Broadway plays they could not have. They couldn't obtain at all. Right?
Yeah,
they couldn't do that. I love that when at all possible, they would use the actual actors or folks from the plays. Most notably, in our case, maybe that Myrna Loy and William Powell both did The Thin Man.
Yes,
the adaptation of that for them. But there were a lot of crossover actors from the other radio shows of the time as well, and that Cecil B. DeMille was the host.
Yeah.
And that he because he wanted the original players for most things, that he actually paid them, and some of them up to $5,000 a pop, which is, pretty good day's work.
Yeah.
In the 30s. But that he, and I'm sure Sean's going to go into this, so I'm going to let him, but that he got ousted as the host for some
commies.
For some commies.
Buy some commies.
Buy some commies.
Okay. Yeah, so let me...
Cecil.
Wait, what? What'd you say?
I don't like rich white men. They irritate me.
Oh, I'm glad I have no money. So, yeah, let me just go back. You covered most of it, but so broadcasting from New York, this series premiered at 2:30 p.m. October 14th, 1934 on the NBC Blue Network with a production of Seventh Heaven, starring Miriam Hopkins and John Bowles in a full-hour adaptation of the 1922 Broadway production. The host was the show's fictional producer, Douglas Garrick. Doris Dagmar played another fictional character, Peggy Winthrop, who delivered the commercials. Famed studio executive and film producer and director Cecil B. DeMille took over as the host on June 1st, 1936, and continued until January 22, 1945. As you said, I mean, go ahead. What happened in 1945?
So the allegedly,
He said he was told that by
right, that the American Communist Party wanted him out because AFRA, the American Federation of Radio Association or some shit. Anyway, they had a closed shop, a union shop, and in order to be hired and to remain employed, you had to be a union member. And Cecil B. DeMille wanted, basically, he didn't want a union shop. He was okay with it being a union shop, but he then also did not want the closed shop. He wanted people to have the right to work, whether they were part of the union or not. And so the communists were like, go fuck yourself. And then they pretty much orchestrated getting him ousted. And then after that, it was the show itself. This part I'm a little hazy on. Got picked up by CBS Radio Playhouse, which was owned by Howard Hughes.
Yes, true. I'll get to both, but so the Afra closed shop part of DeMille, but so what I don't know why I thought this part was interesting, but so AFRA, American Federation of Radio Artists, assessed members $1 each to help back a campaign to enact closed shop rulings in California. DeMille, an AFRA member but a stern opponent of closed shops, refused to pay because he believed it would nullify his opposition vote. When AFRA ruled those not paying faced suspension from the union, thus a ban from appearing on the air, DeMille was finished in radio because he also refused to let anyone else pay $1 for him.
Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting, but then
stand on business.
Yeah.
Hey, yes. During the Lux Radio Theater, when it was on CBS in Hollywood, it was CBS Radio Playhouse was the theater owned by Howard Hughes in the early 30s. But yeah, everything else you kind of, I think we hit. DeMille.
I had the only other note I had was that there became international versions of this as well. So it was Australia, South Africa, they had their own versions of it, adapting their own films and plays.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I had mentioned when they transitioned from Broadway plays to movies, the first movie that they did was The Legionnaire and the Lady, starring Marlene Dietrich and Clark Gable, based on the film Morocco. So, and then the next one, as you mentioned, was The Thin Man, with Myrna Loy and William Powell. So,
Luna's giving you a little razzle dazzle.
is that what that is? Number 6, The Lone Ranger. Lone Ranger radio show debuted on January 30th, 1933 on Detroit's WXYZ station, becoming an instant long-running sensation. Show was created by George W. Trendle and writer Fran Stryker. Known for the William Tell Overture theme, the show featured the masked Texas Ranger and his companion Tonto fighting for law in the West. Michelle.
Okay, so everybody knows this, right? I mean, everybody knows the Lone Ranger and Hayo Silver away and Kemosabe and all that stuff. But what I love about it that I maybe didn't know so much about was like the backstory of it, that these group of Texas Rangers got ambushed and that John Reed, was the lone survivor. And that's how he became the Lone Ranger.
That'd be my first sentence.
Is it?
I never knew it.
I didn't know it.
I didn't know any of that.
And then part of it also, and I found kind of, there were some conflicting stories about this, but the reason that Tonto becomes his companion is that Tonto is the one that found him and nursed him back to health, and then they made it look like he also had died when they put
6
up like
graves.
you're right.
Yep.
And then he became his loyal companion, and they went on a not vigilante spree. They went on a revenge spree to try to find the man who did it, and because he also killed his brother.
That I knew, like you said,
I didn't know.
tell you all the catchphrases from it,
Mhm.
all that, the theme song, everything. I was like, oh, he's the lone Texas Ranger. He's
Right.
the Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
And then, did you know all this, Ed?
I did not.
And then I did not know that the Lone Ranger is the Green Hornet's great uncle.
I also didn't. I
That
know that either.
spun me up. But this is what I said. This is what I found. The Lone Ranger's nephew's horse is named Victor.
Everyone knows that.
That is one of my favorite parts from A Christmas Story.
It is so funny. I do love that it's just kind of a good old fashioned revenge
is.
story.
And I liked that there was a code. I was reading his code.
Oh yeah.
And I was like,
oh, I know.
I was like, ooh.
I hope. Do you have it, Sean? Are you going to read it to us? Because it's pretty good.
It was a pretty damn good code.
It's pretty good.
And it was, I thought it was very cool. I could imagine like people just of all ages being surrounding the radio, and just, it was something you could listen to and relate with your whole family, I feel like.
So you all hit most of this, but the Lone Ranger is the sole survivor of a group of 6 ambushed Texas Rangers. So this was a posse of 6 members of the Texas Ranger Division, led by Captain Dan Reed, pursue a band of outlaws led by Bartholomew Butch Cavendish, but are betrayed by a civilian guide who was secretly working with Cavendish, and who led the unsuspecting Rangers into an ambush at a canyon known as Bryant's Gap. Later, a Native American named Tonto stumbles onto the grisly scene. He discovers one of the Rangers, Captain Reed's younger brother, John, barely alive, and he nurses the man to health. Now, this is where I could not find the actual... I don't know if... In some versions, I found Tonto recognizes the lone survivor as the man who had saved his life when they were both children.
I read that too.
In this version, that doesn't exist.
I like this version better.
Yeah, there's some, but John Reed tells Tonto that he intends to hunt down Cavendish and his men and bring them to justice. To conceal his identity and honor his fallen brother, Reed fashions a black domino mask using cloth from his late brother's vest. To aid in the deception, Tonto digs a 6th grave and places at its head a cross bearing John Reed's name, so that Cavendish and his gang will believe that all the Rangers were killed. Little back story. Known for his Shakespearean roles, Todd. Oh no, where's his first name? Oh no,
John.
No. The person who played him, the voice actor who played him,
Tonto.
Who played Tonto.
I have John Todd.
John Todd. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the Lone Ranger. Was John?
Yeah.
John Todd. Known for his Shakespearean roles, soon gained work at Detroit radio station WXYZ as part of director James Jewell's repertory company. His most famous work was The Lone Ranger. He played a local sheriff in some of the earliest episodes, but on the 12th broadcast, which aired February 25th, 1933, Todd, his most famous role, played the masked man's Native American companion, Tonto. Why I'm bringing that up is John Todd was a bald, stocky man of Irish descent, though he occasionally donned a wig for publicity photos. When they were for public appearances, he was usually replaced by a Native American performer, with the exception of a brief period where he was actually replaced by a real Native American on the radio. But Todd played Tonto for almost the entire radio run and was the only original cast member heard on the final broadcast, September 3rd, 1954. Station owner George Trendle wanted to replace Todd in the role of Tonto because he was too old. Todd's replacement, a college-educated Native American, refused to perform the me do and him go type of lines that were written. And so Todd was given back the role of Tonto because he had no problem saying those. And then, as Andrea mentioned, and we are going to get to in two more shows, Todd was also known for his recurring but less significant part on the Green Hornet as Dan Reed, the title character's father and the elderly version of the Lone Ranger's nephew.
Victor's owner.
I also had this one was like a kind of a little bit Shadow-esque in that so the radio show is 33, right?
Mhm.
But it spawns a movie in 38, a novel in
Mhm.
36, a comic strip in 38, and then a comic book in 39. So it was like they merged the fuck out of
God,
this
yeah, they
thing
did. Yeah,
because
they did.
listen, why not?
And think of all the toys at the 5 and 9, like
Oh
think,
yeah,
like
yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
think of all the really
Your little pop guns and shit.
So you brought it up, so I'll say it. It's actually the creed from the Lone Ranger, but I believe that to have a friend, a man must be one. That all men are created equal, and that everyone has within himself the power to make this a better world. That God put the firewood there, but that every man must gather and light it himself. And being prepared physically, mentally, and morally to fight when necessary for that which is right. That a man should make the most of what equipment he has. That this government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall live always. That men should live by the rule of what is best for the greatest number.
for the greatest number, motherfuckers.
Not the 1%. That sooner or later, somewhere, somehow, we must settle with the world and make payment for what we have taken. That all things change but truth, and that truth alone lives on forever. In my country, in my creator, my country, my fellow man. So that's what the Lone Ranger believed in.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good. It's
I mean, that's an America I can get behind.
yes, that's I can do that.
Jesus.
Number 7, the Burns and Allen Show. 1932, the Burns and Allen Show was a comedy patter show featuring real-life husband and wife George Burns and Gracie Allen. In the entire run of the late 30s, it was never mentioned that the pair were married. Large part of the show was a continued flirtation act with Burns as Allen's most persistent suitor. Their real-life marriage was written in the show in 1941, but in the entire decade of the 30s, it was never mentioned.
And it was because their ratings were slipping.
That they
She
changed
admitted that
Yeah.
That
they
that
were.
George was like, we
Yes.
better.
Oh, okay.
Andrea.
Why is it always when I can't find shit?
Oh no.
Like,
Oh, I'm sorry. Just go in order of
no,
Andrea, Michelle, Andrea,
Please don't apologize. I could not find anything on the conception or the 30s version of this. I could find everything in the 40s and 50s, and yeah, I couldn't. I don't like that at all.
So
Okay.
this is
Michelle, what do you got?
this was one of the others that gave me a fit because there's so much of it, like, because it ran so long and because they were so popular, but they so they were a vaudeville act, like the Jordans.
Mm-hmm.
And that they started doing small shows and like they'd have appearances on like Rudy Valley shows or Guy Lombardo, and then they started to gain some traction and then got their own shows. But they had so many iterations. You're not wrong about this. Like it was like The Adventures of Gracie, and then it was changed to the George Burns and Gracie Allen show, and then it was Burns and Allen. Like it went through all these different changes, but it was, I think, after Guy Lombardo left the air that George and Gracie got their show and took his spot in that time slot. You're right though that it's like so much of it bleeds into later and
Mhm.
into the TV show that it's hard to find things I thought just about the radio show. But I'm sure Sean has a ton.
I'm sure he does.
It's a lot of pressure. But yeah, going back, Burns and Allen were both in vaudeville. They met in 1922 and first performed together at the Hill Street Theater in Newark, New Jersey, and continued in small town vaudeville theaters for several years together. They married in Cleveland on January 7th, 1926. 3 years later, Burns and Allen made their debut radio performance on a broadcast in London on the BBC. And as soon as they returned to the U.S., they both went to NBC Radio and auditioned for a spot, and they were not picked up. So then, after a solo appearance by Gracie Allen on Eddie Cantor's radio show, they were both together for the first time in America on Rudy Valley's The Fleischmann's Yeast Hour, February 15th, 1932. And that led to them being asked to be regulars on the Guy Lombardo show on CBS. So they were regulars on the show. Lombardo has a contract dispute with CBS and leaves for NBC, and Burns and Allen then take his spot with The Adventures of Gracie, first airing on September 19th, 1934. They kept that title until the change to the Burns and Allen show in 1936. And so most of what Michelle just said, but I wanted to mention, even though this wasn't great, I think it's hilarious, but the duo launched a running gag that really cemented them as radio stars. The fictitious hunt for Allen's lost brother, which began on January 4th, 1933, and eventually became a cross-network phenomenon. Allen would go on other shows, especially those produced by the J. Walter Thompson Advertising Agency, because they produced the Burns and Allen series. So whoever their agency also had, they would put her on the show, and she would go there looking for her brother. Her bad publicity after a bid by NBC to squelch the stunt and an accidental mention by Rudy Valley on his Fleischmann's Hour just kept it going. Allen's real brother, a very shy accountant living in San Francisco, actually had to go into hiding until the gag ran its course. So yeah, the other not as well-known gag, but they followed it with a gag in which Allen launched a comedic and fictitious run for the presidency,
running on the surprise
party. So during the election year of 1940, she represented the fictitious surprise party and advocated nonsense as a part of her platform. Allen actually received write-in votes on election day.
Oh, God.
So 2 good gags from them.
So also Gracie was the workhorse in this relationship too.
Yep.
Like she was everywhere all
When
the time.
was Say Goodnight, Gracie? When did they start that? That's what I was trying to
think
find.
That was their TV show.
Was that the
In
TV
40s?
show?
Yeah,
right.
it started
Okay.
in, I think,
Okay.
late 40s, early 50s
Like I
when
said,
they
there
went
was
to
so
TV.
much I didn't.
Say
Yeah,
goodnight, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie.
Well, I will tell you this. I don't know why I jumped it or left it out, but in the beginning, she was the straight person.
Mhm.
He was the slapstick.
really?
Yeah. And then they quickly realized, like, oh no, she is hilarious.
She's got the chop.
And so what we kind of know of them now is not how they started. It's not how this began. But number 8, the Green Hornet. We were just talking about this, and I should have maybe put it closer. This show distinguished by its use of classical music for themes and for bridges between scenes. Green Hornet was one of radio's best known and most distinctive juvenile adventure shows. The series detailed the adventures of Britt Reed, a debonair newspaper publisher by day, crime-fighting masked hero at night. With his faithful valet Kato, Britt Reed, daring young publisher, matches wits with the underworld, risking his life so that criminals and racketeers within the law may feel its weight by the sting of the Green Hornet. Number 8, Michelle.
One of the things I noted on this, so we talked about a little bit how he's the grandnephew of the Lone Ranger, but that back in this era, like the 30s and then seriously in the 40s, which we'll get to later, but like editor or newspaper publisher was like a glam fucking job, right?
What?
Like they were like, what do you do? Like, I'm a newspaper editor, or some shit. And they were like, oh, right.
Mhm.
And can you think in our lifetime that you could name like a okay, publisher is maybe a bit, but like a newspaper editor?
No.
Right, because it's not a fucking thing anymore. But in this day,
It's a big thing.
it was a thing, right?
It's a big thing.
The other thing I noted that so part of it, because he was a vigilante, right, was that he could move, in the circles and whatever.
Mhm.
But that there was a version of the opening where the narrator would say, you know, the Green Hornet hunts the biggest of all game, and then there was a line in there about that basically said that it implied that the FBI could not do their fucking jobs, and that J. Edgar Hoover cried like a little bitch about it, and then they had to change it. His fragile ego.
My only sentence: J. Edgar Hoover was such a bitch. That's my only sentence.
Cried like
about
a
this.
little bitch.
Yeah, because he said G-men couldn't find them, and he was like,
and the implication that they couldn't get their shit together and do their jobs, and so he was like, me. And then they changed the opening.
I wish J. Edgar Hoover was alive to know, just for him to know how many, like, without J. Edgar Hoover, there wouldn't be Roy Cohn. Without Roy Cohn, there wouldn't be Fuckface McGee in the White House. I hate J. Edgar Hoover. I hate him.
How do you feel about the Green Hornet?
You know what? It's just tainted by that horrible movie you made me watch.
I love that movie.
That movie was so bad.
Okay.
I prefer what they called it in, what was it? China? Where they just called it Kato?
Oh,
when it was on TV,
China?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when Bruce Lee played Kato, this is just the Lone Ranger. That's all it is. There's nothing.
Kind of the same.
It's the Lone Ranger. And I love that they gave a nod. Like, we know. Hey, guess what? They're related, so it's carrying it on. I shouldn't say it's a continuation of the Lone Ranger. The Green Hornet isn't he's just never been up there with my, I guess that doesn't matter either, does it? Is a radio show?
Sure, it matters. Right now, we're talking radio shows.
It's a radio show. It sounded like it was really fun. And
okay.
You know, good thing for the kids to play and all that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So the reason it's similar, 1935, George W. Trendle, the WXYZ co-owner and managing partner who had spearheaded the development of the Lone Ranger, sought to bring a similar series to the air. With writer Fran Stryker and director James Jewell, Trendle sought to create a series that would show that a political system could be riddled with corruption and that one man could successfully combat this with white-collar lawlessness. Liking the acoustic possibilities of a B sound, Trendle directed it be incorporated into the show. So the team spent a lot of time experimenting with names, like the Hornet. There was a lot of names, but the name... the Hornet is what they like, but the name had been used elsewhere and could have posed rights problems. So colors including blue and pink were considered, but the creators settled on green. So we got the Green Hornet. We got that title because Trendle likes the B sound, just to be clear.
Yeah, that's...
Okay. So the series originated on January 31st, 1936. Same local Detroit station that originated its companion shows, The Lone Ranger and Challenge of the Yukon. The vigilante nature of the hero's operation quickly resulted in the Green Hornet being declared an outlaw himself. The Green Hornet became thought of as one of the city's biggest criminals, allowing him to walk into suspected racketeers' offices and ply them for information or even demand a cut of their profits. In doing so, the Green Hornet usually provoked them to attack him, giving him license to defeat and then leave them for the police. And then we already talked about this, but I'm saying it to make a bridge to this particular episode, but one relatively minor aspect of the character is the actual blood relationship to the Lone Ranger. The Lone Ranger's nephew was Dan Reed, but in the November 11th, 1947 episode, Too Hot to Handle, Britt tells his father that he is in fact the Green Hornet. After Dan's initial shock and anger, Dan refers to a vigilante pioneer ancestor of theirs. Dan himself had ridden alongside in Texas. So as he expressed pride and love for his son, the Lone Ranger theme briefly played in the background of this episode.
That is something that I would, it's an Easter egg. Like it's something that people would geek out about. I would
kind of cool.
Geek out. Yes.
Yeah. Number 9, Lights Out. Lights Out is an American radio program devoted mostly to horror and the supernatural. Created by Willis Cooper and then eventually taken over by Arch Obler, versions of Lights Out aired on different networks at various times, from January 3rd, 1934 to the summer of 47, when the series eventually made the transition to television. Lights Out was one of the earliest radio horror programs. And that is Andrea.
This is such a cool concept. I reading the different stories that were on there are so creepy. And there's something about your mind is filling in what those noises mean and what is being described. I said my note on it is this show sounds slightly disturbing and amazing. Like it just, I know that I would have loved it. I loved that it was like Wednesday at midnight originally. Like
I found that they only ever aired it Wednesdays at midnight.
Yeah. And and I think maybe I saw that they moved it after
Arch took it.
Yes.
Okay.
But I thought that was so cool, and I couldn't imagine, like, because there's a whole, since you are listening, if you were up at midnight, if you were a kid and even and you're trying to sneak this, you've got to like set the radio. You've got to be everything about it just seemed like the equivalent of reading under the covers with the flashlight. And I loved it.
Michelle?
I like that they changed it from a serial to an anthology.
Yes.
Because it seemed, but you could tell more stories that way, right? Obviously, but like it could be creepier or gorier or whatever, depending on what you were, doing that week.
Yeah.
I also, that by the time Willis Cooper left, that the show had over like 600 fan clubs.
Yes.
Right. Which just, I love the idea of that too, where it becomes like a thing you could talk to your friends about, or be like, did you hear, did you get to stay up, or did you sneak to stay up right? And then you could talk about it. And by no surprise that Rod Serling was very inspired by these guys and this show. And so, after Arch Obler took over, he wanted to keep the format like mostly the same, but he started to like change
throw in
or
a couple of
like I think he said like for every 2 horror mystery ones he would do a show that would have some kind of like maybe not political message, but he was an anti-fascist, as we all should all be. And
it's not crazy, folks.
Yeah, he just
a little bit of a moral message though.
Yeah,
too,
he drew,
and
exactly. He started, and Serling did that too.
He did
a lot.
He did.
So I think maybe a lot of his inspiration for that kind of thing probably came from
that
Arch.
makes went from terrifying to like, oh, the monsters on Maple Street are your neighbors. Right. Sorry, that was a lot there.
So I'll start with Willis Cooper. But by the late 20s, Willis Cooper was writing advertising copy in Chicago and then soon entered radio, writing scripts for the NBC radio program Empire Builders. Little callback to our previous radio show.
Yeah.
He later worked as continuity editor of CBS Chicago, and in 1933 left to take the same position at NBC in Chicago. In 1934, he created the dramatic series, late-night horror radio program called Lights Out, which he also directed. The program quickly earned a reputation for its gory deaths and sound effects. The show would prove to be a long-term success, but in 1936, Cooper capitalized on the fame of Lights Out, resigned from NBC, moved to Hollywood, where he worked as a screenwriter for film studios. I bring all that up to say, in the discussion on Frankenstein, the movie that we had, we talked about Fritz as the assistant.
Yeah.
But we know Igor.
Igor.
So Cooper wrote a little screenplay for the 1939 film Son of Frankenstein, and he introduced the much parodied character of Igor.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
okay.
It was his screenplay that changed Fritz to Igor.
Okay, and it is Igor. No, it's Igor. And
I know that's why I was actually making a joke.
Igor.
But
sorry.
Okay, so Cooper departs. His replacement, a young, eccentric, and ambitious Arch Obler, picked up where he left off, often following Cooper's general example, but investing the scripts with his own concerns. To Michelle's point, he made imaginative use of stream of consciousness narration, sometimes introduced social and political themes that reflected his commitment to anti-fascist liberalism.
Not a bad thing, folks.
Praised as one of broadcasting top talents, he is regarded today as a key innovator of the radio drama. But Obler's personality and ego were known to be larger than life. There was a radio historian named John Dunning who I said all that because I just wanted to say this quote. Few people were ambivalent when it came to Arch Obler. He was one of those intense personalities who was liked and disliked with equal fire. I just like that quote. But Obler, so when it did go to the midnight time slot, right after he took it over, Obler soon realized that being at midnight and not having a sponsor gave him the freedom to experiment with style, content, story. Although NBC maintained strict neutrality regarding Nazi Germany and fascist Italy, Obler smuggled anti-fascist messages into the program. And so Obler caused controversy with his very first play for the series called Burial Services. The ending of the play, in which a young girl is buried alive with no help of rescue, was found to be too much for audiences. Letters of protest poured into NBC. After the incident, Obler toned down the realistic terror in the horror plays in favor of the more fantastic. Perhaps the best remembered story from this series is Chicken Heart. In that story, the tiny heart of a chicken kept alive in a petri dish in a lab grows exponentially until it covers the entire earth. Obler was very innovative with sound effects, and the insistent beating heart creates much of the terror in the broadcast. I bring up that story to say Stephen King singles out Chicken Heart from Lights Out as a memorable episode in his discussion of horror radio in the book Dance Macabre. Is that how you say that?
Dance Macabre.
That's it.
It's on the top shelf right behind you.
Yeah, Chicken Heart. Around the time Obler was writing for Lights Out, he was invited to Hollywood to write sketches for Lucky Strike-sponsored Your Hollywood Parade and the Chase and Sanborn Hour. He caused controversy with his script contribution to the Chase Sanborn Hour in the sketch. Host Don Amici and guest Mae West portrayed a slightly bawdy Adam and Eve, satirizing the biblical tale of the Garden of Eden.
Well, how do you think they got those kids?
Yeah. So, and then in 1937, wrote another sketch where Mae West is trading quips with Edgar Bergen's dummy Charlie McCarthy, and that caused a furor that resulted in West being banned from broadcasting and from being mentioned at all on NBC programming for 15 years.
Oh my God, NBC. Take the stick out your ass.
The sketch resulted in letters from outraged listeners and decency groups. What upset church-going listeners wasn't the biblical parody so much as the fact that it had the bad luck to air on the Sunday show.
Bad luck
You
for
just
you.
can't. You can blaspheme.
Number
It's
10.
not on Sunday.
Not on Sunday.
Flash Gordon. 1935 Flash Gordon radio show was a 26-part weekly serial that debuted on April 27, 1935, airing on Saturdays. The fast-paced space opera frequently ended with cliffhangers. The show brought the popular comic weekly newspaper strip to audio audiences. It followed Flash Gordon, Dale Arden, and Dr. Zarkov's adventures on planet Mongo, fighting Ming the Merciless. Michelle.
My biggest note here was like the creator, a homie knew how to keep a revenue stream alive. Because
yeah,
I'm not saying this was easy, but it was smart to just very closely follow the comics. That gives you that's how the 26 episodes came to be for the first Interplanetary Adventures of Flash Gordon. And then after that ended, they had the further adventures.
yeah.
And then that led to another of his Jungle Jim, and then it just like he was not letting go.
Yeah.
I do love that Flash Gordon was played by Gail Gordon, who I remember as being like Mr. Wilson from the early Dennis the Menace TV show. But I think he was also Lucy's boss.
Yeah,
on one of the later Lucy.
He was in 2 of Lucy's shows.
Yeah.
So like,
because they had worked together, and
yeah,
she liked him
and if she liked you, you were gonna
yeah. Oh, and that Flash, he's a polo player and Yale graduate.
polo player. I mean, come on,
Again,
Can't go wrong.
can't go wrong.
I know.
I like NFL quarterback from the Jets better, but
Built for being shot into space.
Yeah, I mean,
So, Andrea, you had mentioned maybe it was before we started the show about your frustration about not being able to find much on this show. My point was, and Michelle just said it, but the 26 episode radio serial only aired from April 27th to October 26, 1935. It was not on the radio very long.
Yeah.
I put it on this list because I did feel, again, to Michelle's point, it led to, the new event or the next event and then movies. And I think that as far as the character Flash Gordon, a lot of people know who Flash Gordon is. And I would argue, yes, there was a comic strip, but I think they know him from the radio show.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people do. So The Amazing Interplanetary Adventures of Flash Gordon was a 26-episode radio serial adapting the Flash Gordon comic strip, recorded in New York and transcribed for broadcast on West Coast stations. Program aired from April 27th to October 26th, 35. Each installment was 15 minutes. The final installment had Flash Gordon, Dale Arden, and Dr. Hans Zarkov landing in a jungle where they encounter another Hearst comic character, Jungle Jim, thus transitioning into Jungle Jim as the replacement for Flash Gordon. And so you guys said most of this, but the series followed the comic strip very closely, but the comic strip was out ahead of the radio show. And so the first 4 episodes run through the first year of the comic strip very quickly in order to, because again, they're 15 minutes. So then they were trying to catch up to the current story. The first episode breezes through the first 10 weeks of the strip. A long narration at the beginning of episode 2 covers the next 5 weeks. And then the rest of episode 2 covers the first 8 weeks of the next storyline, The Monsters of Mongo. By episode 5, they had caught up. And so then they are beginning to follow the comic week to week. I just thought that was interesting that they just found a way to run through a year of a comic strip in, 30, 40 minutes. But, anything else about Flash Gordon?
Terrible movie.
Love the movie, and you both.
I love Sam J. Jones.
And did we not have Flash Gordon at the movie?
We did have Flash Gordon
at the
yes, we did at the video store.
Okay.
I'm trying to get rid of my prude.
That's not label.
Like I said,
that was cute. Look at you, cutie.
Before we started, both of you expressed some trepidation about radio shows and the lack of information. I would argue
this was pretty.
Y'all did great. You had plenty of information.
I was a bitch. She was trepidatious.
But that's me saying thank you to both of you for, I know this one might have been a little tough, but y'all came through. So
thank you, Sean.
I appreciate it. And for everybody else, if you're still with us, geez, sorry. But, like, follow, subscribe to the show if you're enjoying it. Leave a comment. And I really challenge anybody, like, hit us up on socials or on here and, like, tell us we're crazy. Tell these two they don't know what they're talking about, whatever. Just remember, we regret nothing. Till next week, take care of yourself, and we'll see you then.
So swing to the future, the past in our sight. We regret nothing. The capsule's tonight.